The Hive World of Orestes Prime was screaming. It was not a scream of fear. It was a scream of starvation. The food ships from the agri-worlds had not arrived for 3 years. The warp storms cut them off. The people in the lower city had eaten all the rats. Then they ate the leather of their boots. Now they looked at each other with hungry eyes. The air recyclers were failing. Thick yellow smog filled the streets. It burned the lungs of the children and the old people. They died first. Their bodies were not buried. There was no space. They were thrown into the waste compactors to make fuel. The planetary governor was afraid. He locked the blast doors of the upper spire. He had water. He had food. He did not care about the billion citizens below. He only cared that the tithe was late. The tithe is the tax every world must pay to the emperor. If the tithe is late, the Imperial Navy comes. They do not bring food. They bring fire. The governor ordered the enforcers to restore order. The enforcers went down into the smog. They did not come back. The gangs had stolen heavy stubbers and laser rifles. They ruled the darkness. The law was dead. In the center of the Manufactorum district stood Precinct Fortress 9. It was a castle of black iron. It was the home of the Adeptus Arbites. The Arbites are the judges of the Imperium. They are not local police. They enforce the Emperor's will. But now they were trapped. 10,000 rioters surrounded the fortress. They threw firebombs at the gates. The fires burned hot. The Arbites on the walls were exhausted. Their armor was cracked. Their ammunition was almost gone. Marshal Dredd looked at his men. He saw fear. He saw fatigue. They had held the line for 6 weeks. They could not hold it for another hour. Deep inside the fortress, the air was cold. Magos Varnus did not feel the heat of the fires outside. Varnus was a priest of the machine god. He had replaced his eyes with red lenses. He had replaced his hands with metal claws. He was working on a slab of steel. On the slab lay a man. The man was Judge Alex Murphy. Murphy was a good officer. He followed the rules. He did not take bribes. A gang leader named Boudica had caught him. They shot him many times. They destroyed his body. But his brain was still alive. Just barely. Varnus was a radical. He liked to study things that were forbidden. He had found an ancient machine in the ruins below the city. It was from the dark age of technology. It was a combat chassis made of living metal. It was not a servitor. Servitors are slaves with lobotomized brains. This machine was designed for independent thought. The Mechanicus forbade such things. They called it abominable intelligence. Varnus did not care. He needed a weapon to survive the riot. He connected Murphy's brain to the ancient machine. He spliced the nerves. He welded the armor. He woke the ghost in the machine. The rioters breached the main gate. A massive explosion blew the iron doors inward. The mob roared like a beast. They flooded into the courtyard. They carried pipes and knives. They wanted blood. The surviving Arbites formed a shield wall. They were pushed back. The mob was too strong. Then the heavy doors of the laboratory slid open. A cloud of freezing steam hissed out. Heavy metallic footsteps shook the deck plates. Clang, clang, clang. The noise was rhythmic and heavy. The mob stopped shouting. They looked at the smoke. A figure walked out. It was 7 feet tall. It was covered in silver armor. It did not look like a space marine. It looked sleeker, more industrial. A black visor covered its face. A red light scanned back and forth behind the glass. The machine looked at the chaos. Data scrolled across his vision. It identified the weapons. It identified the threat. It felt a strange memory of duty. It raised a massive autocannon built into its arm. Its voice was a flat, metallic drone. It did not shout. It simply stated a fact. Dead or alive, you are coming with me. The courtyard of Precinct Fortress 9 became a slaughterhouse in 3 seconds. The mob did not stop immediately. They were pushed from behind by thousands of angry people. The front ranks saw the silver machine. They tried to stop. They could not. The crush of bodies forced them forward. The machine raised its right arm. The auto-cannon was a heavy weapon. It was usually mounted on a tank or a tripod. On the silver arm, it looked like a pistol. The machine did not aim with its eyes. It aimed with a computer in its mind. The first shot was loud. It sounded like a hammer hitting an anvil. The bullet was large. It was a solid slug of reactive metal. It hit the lead rioter in the chest. The man exploded. He did not just fall down. The impact threw his body backward into the crowd. The mob screamed. The machine did not pause. It fired again, and again, and again. The rhythm was perfect. There was no panic in the shooting. Every shot killed a target. The machine prioritized targets with weapons. It saw a man with a firebomb. It calculated the arc of the throw. It shot the man in the shoulder. The man dropped the bomb. He burned his own friends. Marshal Dredd watched from the cracked balcony. He wiped blood from his forehead. He had never seen anything like this. He looked at Magos Varnus. The red-robed priest was trembling. Varnus was chanting a prayer to the machine god. He was happy. His creation was working. Dredd was not happy. He was terrified. He knew the laws of the Adeptus Mechanicus. They did not allow machines to think. This machine was thinking. It was choosing targets. It was holding back fire when an unarmed woman fell in front of it. That was not a simple program. That was judgment. The mob broke. Fear is a powerful weapon. The rioters saw that they could not hurt the silver giant. Bullets bounced off its chest. Knives broke on its legs. The silver armor was not simple steel. It was ceramite mixed with ancient alloys found in the deep vaults. It was almost as strong as the armor of a space marine. The rioters turned and ran. They trampled each other to get away. The courtyard emptied. Only the dead remained. The smoke from the burning gate drifted across the stone floor. The machine stood alone. It lowered its weapon. A panel on its leg slid open. The gun folded and retracted inside the leg. The panel closed. The machine turned around. It looked up at the balcony. It zoomed in on Marshal Dredd. The visor glowed red. It spoke again. Its voice was amplified by speakers in its chest. It echoed off the fortress walls. It said, reporting for duty. Dredd walked down the stairs. His boots crunched on the glass and debris. The other Arbites stayed back. They held their shotguns tight. They did not trust the machine. Dredd stopped 5 feet away. He looked into the black visor. He saw his own reflection. He saw a tired old man in broken armor. "Identify yourself," Dredd said. His voice was rough. He had been shouting for days. The machine twitched. A spark of electricity jumped from his neck joint. It was a glitch. The human brain inside was fighting the computer. The brain remembered a name. Murphy. But the computer deleted the name. It replaced it with a code. "I am Unit 734. Designation RoboCop. I am the enforcement of the Lex Imperialis." Dredd nodded slowly. He did not ask who built it. He did not ask about the tech-heresy. He needed a weapon. The city was falling. He would ask questions later, if they survived. "Come with me," Dredd said. The machine followed. Its footsteps were heavy. They walked into the fortress. The air inside smelled of sweat and recycled ozone. The power was flickering. The generator was running on low fuel. Wounded Arbites lay in the hallways. They looked up as the machine passed. Some made the sign of the Aquila. They thought it was an angel of the Emperor. Others looked away in fear. They thought it was a monster. They reached the strategic operations room. It was a dark room with a large hololith table in the center. The table was flickering. The map of the city was full of red zones. Red meant anarchy. Green meant order. There was very little green. Margos Varnus was already there. He was plugging his data cables into a terminal. He wanted to check the diagnostics of the machine. He ignored the humans. To Varnus, the machine was the only important thing in the room. "The governor is not answering," the communications officer said. She was young. Her uniform was too big for her. She had lost weight during the siege. "The Voxcasters are jammed. The gangs have set up localized jamming towers. We are cut off." Dredd looked at the map. The jamming towers were in the lower district. That was enemy territory. It was a maze of crumbling factories and hab blocks. No patrol had gone there in 10 years. "We need to clear the jamming," Dredd said. "We need to call for help. The fleet must know we are still alive." He looked at his men. They were barely standing. They could not launch an assault. He looked at the machine. It was standing perfectly still. It did not breathe. It did not get tired. "Can you fight in the lower district?" Dredd asked. The machine processed the question. It downloaded the maps of the lower district. It saw the crime statistics. It saw the threat level. It was extremely high. The computer calculated a 4% chance of survival for a human officer. It calculated an 89% chance of success for itself. "Affirmative," the machine said. Dredd nodded. He pointed to the map. "There are 3 towers. Destroy them. Restore the signal." The machine turned to leave. Margos Varnus disconnected his cables. He made a sound of protest. He spoke in a static click. "The unit is not tested. It needs calibration. The machine spirit is raw." Dredd ignored him. "We have no time for prayers, priest. Let it work." The machine walked out of the fortress. It walked past the dead bodies in the courtyard. It walked through the broken gates. It stepped onto the streets of Orestes Prime. The city was a nightmare. The sky was blocked by miles of smog and industrial pipework. It was always twilight in the middle hive. The streetlights were broken. The only light came from burning barrels and the glow of toxic waste spills. The machine switched its vision to thermal. It saw the heat signatures of rats. It saw the heat of people hiding in the shadows. It walked down the main avenue. A group of looters was breaking into a ration store. They were smashing the windows with iron bars. They were stealing crates of starch paste. This was food for the workers. Stealing it was a capital crime. The machine stopped. It analyzed the crime. Theft of imperial property. Penalty. Servitor conversion or execution. The machine did not feel pity. It did not care that the looters were starving. It only knew the law. "Halt," the machine said. The looters dropped the crates. They pulled out knives and stub pistols. They were desperate men. They fired at the machine. The bullets pinged off the silver chest. The machine drew its weapon. It fired 3 times. 3 men fell. The shots were precise. Head, heart, head. The other looters ran away. The machine walked to the broken window. It scanned the remaining crates. It logged the inventory. It transmitted a signal to the precinct. Property secured. It did not wait for a retrieval team. It continued its mission. The machine walked for an hour. It went deeper into the lower city. The buildings here were older. They were covered in rust and mold. The people here did not look human. They were covered in sores. They had mutations from the pollution. Some had 3 eyes. Some had no hair. They watched the machine from the windows. They had never seen a clean thing before. The machine was bright and silver. It was a mirror reflecting their own filth. They hated it. The first jamming tower was on top of an old chemical plant. The plant was controlled by a gang called the Iron Skulls. They were big men. They injected combat drugs into their veins. Their muscles were unnatural. They wore armor made from scrap metal. They had heavy weapons. A heavy bolter was set up at the entrance. The gunner saw the machine coming. He laughed. He thought it was a servitor. He pulled the trigger. The heavy bolter roared. Exploding shells hit the street around the machine. Concrete shattered. Dust filled the air. The machine did not run. It did not take cover. It calculated the reload time of the heavy bolter. It calculated the heat buildup of the barrel. It walked through the dust. A shell hit its shoulder pauldron. The armor cracked. The impact spun the machine around. It stabilized instantly. The damage sensor flashed yellow. Armor integrity at 82%. Acceptable. The machine raised its autocannon. It did not aim at the gunner. It aimed at the ammo belt feeding the gun. It fired a burst. The bullets hit the explosive shells in the belt. The heavy bolter exploded. The gunner vanished in a cloud of fire and shrapnel. The machine walked through the fire. The remaining gang members charged. They swung chainswords and power hammers. The machine moved faster than a human could track. It caught a swinging hammer with its left hand. The servos whined. The metal of the hammer handle bent. The machine crushed the hand of the attacker. It threw the man into a wall. Another ganger tried to stab the machine in the neck. The machine spun. It backhanded the man. The force of the blow broke the man's neck. It was brutal, efficient combat. No wasted movement. The machine reached the tower. It was an ugly structure of stolen vox parts and wires. The machine scanned it. It found the power source. It fired one shot into the generator. The tower sparked and died. 1 down, 2 to go. The machine turned to leave. It paused. It looked at the bodies of the gang members. It zoomed in on a tattoo on a dead man's arm. It was a symbol, a 3-headed serpent. The machine's database searched for the symbol. It found no match in the local criminal records. This was new. The machine recorded the image. It continued to the next target. The second tower was easier. It was guarded by younger gangers. They ran when they saw the machine. They had heard the noise from the chemical plant. They knew death was coming. The machine destroyed the second tower without firing a shot. It simply ripped the cables out with its hands. The third tower was different. It was located in a sunken plaza. The plaza was flooded with toxic water. The water was knee-deep. The machine stepped into the water. It did not care about the acid. Its seals were tight. In the center of the plaza was a statue of a long-dead hero. The jamming device was strapped to the statue's head. The machine scanned the area. It detected no life signs. That was a trap. The logic sensor flagged a warning. Ambush probability 99%. The machine stopped. It waited. The water rippled. Something was moving under the water. The machine switched to sonar. It detected shapes closing in. Not humans. Something else. The water erupted. 4 creatures jumped out. They were not men. They were pure muscle and claws. They were Genestealers, pure strain Genestealers. They were fast, faster than the machine. They were the vanguard of a Tyranid infestation. But the machine did not know that name. It only classified them as Xenos threat extremists. The first creature slashed at the machine's chest. Its claws were diamond hard. They cut through the ceramite like paper. Blue sparks flew. The machine stumbled back. Logic failure. Speed of target exceeds parameters. Rerouting power to combat reflexes. The machine fired its gun. The creature dodged the bullets. It was a blur of chitin and teeth. The second creature jumped on the machine's back. It tried to tear the head off. The machine reached back It grabbed the creature's throat. The creature bit the machine's arm. Metal crunched. Hydraulic fluid sprayed out. It looked like white blood. The machine did not feel pain. It registered damage. Left arm actuator compromised. Efficacy reduced by 40%. The machine slammed its back against the statue. The creature was crushed between the silver armor and the stone. It shrieked, a high-pitched alien sound. The machine fired its gun point-blank into the creature's chest. The alien died. 1 down. 3 left. The other alien circled. They were learning. They saw the gun. They stayed low. They moved in the water. The machine calculated a new strategy. It could not track them all. It needed to change the environment. It looked at the power lines hanging above the plaza. They were sparking. They were live. The machine aimed up. It shot the cable. The heavy wire snapped. It fell into the water. Thousands of volts of electricity hit the toxic sludge. The water boiled. The aliens screamed as the electricity cooked them. Their nervous systems overloaded. They convulsed and sank. The machine stood in the electrified water. Its own systems were insulated. It watched the aliens die. Threat neutralized. The machine climbed the statue. It destroyed the third jamming device. The static in the air cleared. The Vox channels opened. The machine transmitted a message to the fortress. Objectives complete. Significant damage sustained. Requesting repair. Back at the fortress, the comms officer shouted. The signal is clear. I have a link to the orbital station. Dredd breathed out. He felt a moment of hope. But the hope died quickly. The hololith table updated. With the jamming gone, the sensors could see the whole city. The red zones were not just riots. They were coordinated movements. The icons were moving toward the spire, toward the governor's palace. And there was something else. A message came through the text channel. It was not from the Imperial Navy. It was from the lower city. It was broadcasting on all frequencies. Dredd played the audio. It was a voice. It was smooth, arrogant, and cruel. This is Clarence Bodicker, the voice said. Or at least, that is the name I use now. I see you have a new toy, Marshal. A shiny silver man. I like it. I want it. Send it to me at the slaughterhouse district. If you do not, I will detonate the thermal charges I have placed under the spire. The governor will fall. The hive will die. You have 1 hour. Dredd looked at the map. The slaughterhouse district was a death trap. It was where they processed the grog's meat. It was a maze of hooks and conveyors. It is a trap, Varnus said. Do not send the unit. It is damaged. The Omnissiah's gift must be preserved. Dredd looked at the screen. He saw the heat signatures of the thermal bombs. They were real. They were powerful enough to topple the spire. He had no choice. He had to buy time. He goes, Dredd said. But he does not go alone. I am going with him. The machine walked back into the fortress. It was limping. Its armor was slashed. White fluid dripped from its arm. It looked broken, but its head was high. It walked to the repair bay. Varnus ran to it. He had welding torches ready. Damage report, Varnus demanded. Structural integrity 64%, the machine said. Ammunition 20%. New directive required. Directive 4 is active, Dredd said, walking into the bay. He was loading a combat shotgun. He put on his helmet. We are going to hunt a heretic. Reload your weapon machine. We leave in 10 minutes. The machine sat in the repair chair. It did not argue. It did not feel fear. It connected to the ammo feed. The internal magazine clicked as it filled. The machine ran a diagnostic on its memory. It found a corrupted file. It was a blurry image of a face, a woman's face. She was smiling. The machine tried to focus on it. The image dissolved into static. The logic wipe was effective, but not perfect. There was a ghost in the machine, and the ghost was sad. "Murphy," a voice whispered in the deep code. The machine ignored it. It was just noise. It was Unit 734. It was the law, and the law was going to the slaughterhouse. While the machine repaired, the city groaned. The ventilation fans in Sector 7 failed. The air grew stale. Thousands of workers in the hab blocks gasped for breath. They did not riot. They were too weak. They sat on the floor and waited to die. A mother held her baby. The baby was silent. It had not cried for days. She gave it the last drop of water from a rusty canteen. It was brown water. It smelled of iron. This was the reality of the Imperium. Heroes fought monsters in the dark, while the innocent slowly suffocated in the grey light. The machine did not know this. It only knew targets. But the man inside the machine, deep down, felt a phantom pain in his chest. It was not a bullet wound. It was the weight of a world that had forgotten how to care. The repair was finished. The armor was welded shut. It looked ugly. Scars of fresh metal crossed the silver chest. It looked like a veteran now. The machine stood up. The servos whined louder than before. The damage to the leg was permanent. It would not run fast again. But it did not need to run. It was a walking tank. Dredd and the machine walked to the transport bay. An armored rhino transport was waiting. The engine coughed black smoke. The driver was a young boy, barely 18. He looked at the machine with wide eyes. "Get us close," Dredd said. "Drop us at the main gate, then pull back." The rhino rumbled out of the fortress. It drove through the empty streets. The riot had moved. The mob was heading up Hive toward the rich districts. The lower city was quiet. It was the silence of the grave. The machine sat in the dark hold of the transport. It checked its weapon. It checked its backup generator. It was ready. The slaughterhouse district smelled of old blood and rot. It was a massive complex of metal sheds and hanging chains. The rhino stopped. The ramp dropped. Dredd and the machine stepped out. The gate was open. A single light bulb flickered above the entrance. "I'll take the left flank," Dredd whispered. "You take the center. Draw their fire." "Affirmative," the machine said. It walked into the light. It was the perfect target. It wanted them to shoot. It wanted to see where they were hiding. It took 3 steps. Then the lights went out. The darkness was total. A laugh echoed from the speakers on the walls. "Welcome to the party," Bodica's voice said. Then the lights turned back on. But they were not normal lights. They were floodlights, blindingly bright. And they revealed the army waiting inside. There were hundreds of them. But they were not just gangers. In the center, standing next to a man in a fine silk suit, was a massive shape. It was twice the size of the machine. It was a combat servitor, but modified. It had saw blades for hands. It had a multi-melter gun on its shoulder. It was a siege breaker. "This is ED-209, Bodica said. "Imperial Guard surplus. A bit glitchy, but very loyal. Kill it." The giant robot roared. It took a step forward. The ground shook. The machine looked at the giant. It calculated the odds. They were 0. The gangs had military hardware. They had off-world backing. And the machine was trapped in a kill box with a monster that could melt tank armor. The strategic situation had shifted from a riot control mission to a desperate survival scenario. The machine raised its gun. It did not retreat. It prepared to execute the law, even if it meant its own destruction. The first shot of the multi-melter began to charge. The air hummed with heat. The battle for the slaughterhouse had begun. The air in the slaughterhouse turned into liquid fire. The multi-melter gun on the shoulder of the ED-209 machine made a sound like a tearing canvas. It fired a beam of pure thermal energy. The beam missed Unit 734 by 3 inches. It hit a stack of steel shipping crates behind him. The crates did not explode. They vanished. The metal turned into white gas instantly. The heat wave washed over 734. His thermal sensors spiked. His armor temperature rose to critical levels in a microsecond. If that beam hit him, he would be slag. He would be nothing but a puddle of molten ceramite. The massive walker took a step forward. The ground shook. Dust fell from the rusty ceiling. The ED-209 was not a smart machine. It was a brute. It had the brain of a lobotomized grox wired into a computer. It did not think about cover. It only knew how to move forward and kill. It raised its other arm. This arm held twin-linked heavy bolters. These were guns that fired explosive rockets the size of a soda can. It unleashed a storm of fire. Unit 734 calculated the trajectory. He could not dodge them all. He was too slow. His damaged leg servo whined in protest. He activated his magnetic clamps in his feet. He locked himself to the floor. He leaned forward into the storm. The explosive shells hit his chest. Boom, boom, boom. The impact was like being hit by a train. His silver armor cracked. Shards of ceramite flew off. The force pushed him back, ripping up the metal floor plates. But he did not fall. His internal gyroscope kept him upright. Marshal Dredd was moving. He was a shadow in the chaos. While the giant robot focused on the silver machine, Dredd ran to the side. He slid behind a conveyor belt loaded with dead animal carcasses. The gangers on the catwalk saw him. They opened fire. Laser beams and solid bullets sparked against the metal machinery. Dredd did not panic. He was a veteran. He fired his shotgun. It was a lawgiver pattern. It fired executioner rounds. These rounds homed in on heat signatures. Dredd fired blind over the cover. The rounds curved in the air. 2 gangers fell from the catwalk screaming. Bodiger stood on a high platform. He was laughing. He held a glass of expensive wine. He watched the robot destroy the lawman. He pressed a button on a remote control. The conveyor belts sped up. Huge hooks swung through the air. They were meant for carrying meat. Now they were weapons. The room was a moving maze of steel and death. Unit 734 analyzed the pattern of the bolter fire. There was a gap of 0.4 seconds between bursts. That was his window. He raised his autocannon. He did not aim at the robot's armor. The armor was thick plasteel. His bullets would bounce off. He aimed at the floor. The ED-209 was heavy. The floor was old. It was rusted metal grating over a drainage pit. 734 fired a sustained burst. He emptied half his magazine into the floor, grating right in front of the walker's left foot. The grating snapped. The metal gave way. The giant robot took a step. Its foot went through the hole. It pitched forward. The machine shrieked. It was a mechanical sound of grinding gears. It fell onto one knee. Its aim was ruined. The multi-melter fired into the ceiling. Molten metal rained down like lava. Dredd saw the opening. He threw a frag grenade. It landed near the robot's exposed knee joint. The explosion was small, but it severed the hydraulic lines. Black oil sprayed out at high pressure. The robot tried to stand. It slipped in its own oil. It fell onto its side. It thrashed like a dying beetle. Its weapons fired wildly. It destroyed the walls. It destroyed the gangers' cover. "Finish it," Dredd yelled over the noise. Unit 734 walked forward. He walked through the rain of sparks. He walked through the smoke. He reached the fallen giant. The ED-209 looked up. Its sensor eyes cycled from red to yellow. It was confused. It tried to reboot. 734 grabbed the barrel of the multi-melter. His hand servos locked. He pulled with hydraulic strength. Metal screamed. He ripped the weapon mount off the chassis. He tossed the heavy gun aside. Then he accessed the robot's data port. A spike from his fist punched into the robot's head. He did not kill it with a bullet. He killed it with code. He uploaded a logic loop. It was a paradox. A simple question that the Grok's brain could not answer. The robot froze. Its lights died. It became a pile of scrap. Boudica stopped laughing. He dropped his wine glass. He turned to run, but Dredd was already climbing the ladder. Boudica pulled a plasma pistol. It was a rare weapon, dangerous. He aimed at Dredd. "Drop it, Boudica," Dredd said. He aimed his shotgun. Boudica grinned. He looked crazy. He looked like a man who knew a secret. "You think you can arrest me?" he shouted. "You are nothing. I have friends in the spire. I have friends in the dark." He fired the plasma pistol. A ball of blue sun flew at Dredd. Dredd threw himself sideways. The plasma hit the railing. The steel vanished. Dredd fell. He hit the ground hard. His armor absorbed the impact, but his ribs cracked. He groaned. Boudica ran through a blast door. He sealed it behind him. Unit 734 looked at the blast door. It was 3 feet of solid adamantium. He could not break it, not with his current weapons. He looked at Dredd. Dredd was coughing blood. The Marshal tried to stand up, but his leg gave out. "I am fine," Dredd lied. "We need to open that door." 734 scanned the room. The gangers were dead or fled. The giant robot was dead, but the mission was a failure. The target had escaped, and the strategic timer was still ticking. The threat of the thermal bombs was real. They went to the control terminal Boudica had used. It was a cogitator bank covered in filth. 734 plugged in. He bypassed the encryption. It was poor quality security. Gangs did not have good tech priests. He downloaded the files. He found the schematics for the bombs. His logic processor paused. The data did not match the threat. Boudica had said the bombs were under the spire. The schematics showed something else. They showed the bombs were placed in Sector 4. Sector 4 was not the spire. Sector 4 was the central plasma vent. "This is a deception," 734 stated. "The bombs are not targeting the governor. They are targeting the planetary generator." Dredd's face went pale. The plasma vent was the heart of the hive. It tapped into the geothermal heat of the planet's core. It provided power for the lights, the water pumps, and most importantly, the void shields. The void shields protected the city from the radiation of the sun and the orbital debris. If the shields fell, the city was naked. "We have to warn them," Dredd said. He limped to the Voxcaster. He tried to hail the fortress. The line was dead. The interference was back, but it was not jamming this time. It was atmospheric. A storm was starting outside. A storm of psychic energy. Suddenly, the ground jumped. It was not a vibration. It was a convulsion. A low boom echoed through the miles of rock and steel. It sounded like the planet's spine breaking. Then came the sound of rushing wind. The lights in the slaughterhouse flickered and died. The emergency red lights did not come on. Everything went black. The hum of the ventilation fans stopped. That was the most terrifying sound of all. The silence of the fans. For thousands of years, the fans had pushed air into the hive. Now the air stopped moving. "They did it," Dredd whispered in the dark. "They killed the power." Unit 734 switched to night vision. The world became green and grainy. He saw Dredd leaning against the wall. He saw the steam rising from the dead robot. Action required, 734 said. We must restore power. Survival probability decreases by 10% every hour. They left the slaughterhouse. The journey back was a descent into hell. The city was in panic. With the lights out, the fear took over. The people in the hab blocks did not know what happened. They only knew the darkness. They screamed. They lit fires. The fires spread. Smoke filled the hallways. There were no water pumps to put out the fires. The machine and the lawman walked through the riots. 734 did not shoot the looters this time. There were too many. Millions of people were pouring into the streets. They were looking for a way up. They wanted to get to the spire. They thought the spire still had light. They were wrong. When they reached the edge of the spire district, they saw the truth. The high wall that separated the rich from the poor was unguarded. The turrets were powered down. The great gate was open. Dread and 734 walked through. They expected to see the golden towers of the nobility shining with emergency power. They saw ruin. The spire was dark too. The rich were just as trapped as the poor. Carriages and luxury speeders sat useless on the roads. Servants ran carrying bags of jewels, but they had nowhere to go. They reached the governor's palace. It was a fortress within the fortress. The gates were barred, but there was a small side entrance for the Arbites. Dread had the key. They entered the palace gardens. The exotic plants were already dying in the cold air. They found the governor in the throne room. It was a massive hall with a glass ceiling. Through the glass, they could see the sky. It was a bruised purple color. The warp storm was visible now that the light pollution was gone. It swirled like a bruise on the eye of God. Governor Jones sat on his throne. He was dead. He had not been killed by a weapon. He had a goblet in his hand. It smelled of bitter almonds, poison. He had taken the easy way out. He knew what was coming. On his lap was a data slate. Dread picked up the slate. He read the last entry. The tithe is impossible. The grain is gone. The water is gone. I have made a deal. If we cannot live as men, we shall live as something else. The star gods promised salvation. They promised change. I opened the vents. I lowered the shields. They are coming. Emperor, forgive me. Dread dropped the slate. It cracked on the floor. He looked at the machine. Star gods, Dread said. He spat the words. The naive call them that. The governor was a fool. He sold us out to Xenos. 734 processed the term. Star gods. His database cross-referenced it. It found a match in the restricted archives. Satan, Necrons, or perhaps the Tyranid hive mind. The term was vague, but the threat was specific. The shields were down to let something in. A siren began to wail. It was a mechanical, hand-cranked siren from the Arbites precinct miles away. It was the invasion alarm. Look up, 734 said. Dread looked up through the glass ceiling. The purple clouds were parting. A shape was descending. It was not a ship. It was a spore. A massive, fleshy sack the size of a cathedral. It burned as it entered the atmosphere. It was followed by another, and another. The sky was weeping fire. Tyranids, Dread said. The vanguard was already here. The Genestealers, they paved the way. Now the Hive fleet is here. This was the catastrophe. It was not a riot. It was not a rebellion. It was an extinction event. The governor had shut down the shields because he was infected by the Genestealer Cult. The Iron Skulls were just a muscle. The three-headed serpent was the icon of the cult of the four-armed emperor. They had sabotaged the power to let the spores land safely. If the shields were up, the spores would have burned. Now they would land in the heart of the city. We need to retreat, Dread said. We need to fortify the precinct. It is the only defensible position. Negative, 734 said. His voice was flat. He was calculating the biomass of the city. He was calculating the rate of consumption. If the Tyranids land, the city falls in 72 hours. We cannot defend. We must attack. Attack what? Dredd asked. A hive ship? We have a shotgun and an autocannon. We must restart the generator, 734 said. We must raise the shields. If we raise the shields while the spores are still descending, the friction will incinerate them. It is the only logical solution. Dredd looked at the machine. He saw the damage on its armor. He saw the oil leaking from its joints. He looked at his own shaking hands. He was an old man. He was tired. The generator is in Sector 4, Dredd said. That is Ground Zero. That is where Boudica went. That is where the cult is waiting. Then we go to Sector 4, 734 said. They left the palace. They did not look at the dead governor. He was irrelevant. The history books would call him a traitor, if there were any history books left. The journey to Sector 4 was a nightmare. The city was changing. The psychic shadow of the Hive fleet was causing madness. People were clawing at their own faces. They were chanting in languages that human tongues could not speak. The shadows seemed to move on their own. In a narrow alleyway, they were ambushed, not by humans, by the hybrids, men with purple skin and sharp teeth. They dropped from the ventilation pipes. They moved with unnatural speed. Dredd fired his shotgun until it clicked empty. He used the stock as a club. He smashed the skull of a hybrid. Another one jumped on his back. It raised a jagged knife. Unit 734 grabbed the hybrid. He did not shoot. He squeezed. The hybrid's ribs collapsed. 734 threw the body at another attacker. He drew a long blade from his leg holster. It was a combat knife, electrified. He fought with cold precision, slash, stab, parry. He was a machine of death, but he was slowing down. His power reserves were at 40%. The fight in the slaughterhouse had drained him. They cleared the alley. Dredd was bleeding from a cut on his forehead. We need transport, Dredd gasped. We can't walk. It's 10 miles. 734 scanned the street. He saw a wrecked Chimera armored transport. It belonged to the Planetary Defense Force. The crew was dead, slaughtered inside. 734 ripped the hatch open. He checked the engine. It was functional. I will drive, 734 said. They drove through the dark city. The headlights of the Chimera cut through the smog. They saw horrors in the light. They saw mobs tearing each other apart for food. They saw strange growths appearing on the walls. Alien moss. The terraforming had begun. The Tyranids did not just eat. They changed the world to fit them. Sector 4 was a burning crater. The explosion of the thermal bombs had destroyed the control center. The plasma vent was roaring. A pillar of blue fire shot up into the sky. It was uncontrolled energy. It was beautiful and deadly. Boudica was there. He had an army. Thousands of cultists stood around the vent. They were chanting. They were welcoming the spores falling from the sky. They had set up heavy weapons barricades. They had stolen sentinel walkers. They had more of the heavy servitors. Dredd looked at the tactical display in the Chimera. There are 5,000 hostiles, Dredd said. We are 2. Strategic disadvantage acknowledged, 734 said. The machine stopped the Chimera. It turned its head to Dredd. The red visor glowed in the dark cabin. Marshal, 734 said, I have a plan. It violates Protocol 1. Protect the innocent. Dredd looked at him. There are no innocent left here. What is the plan? The plasma vent has manual override valves, 734 explained. They are located at the base of the thermal exchange. If we rupture the coolant tanks, the heat will expand. It will not just restart the generator. It will cause a thermal bloom, a localized explosion. It will kill everyone in this sector, Dredd said, including us. It will also vaporize the cult, 734 said. And the heat updraft will carry into the upper atmosphere. It will create a firestorm that will burn the spores before they touch the ground. It is a sacrificial move. Dredd was silent. He looked at the radar. The spores were 5 minutes away. Do it, Dredd said. 734 revved the engine of the Chimera. He did not drive around the barricades. He drove through them. The Chimera was a beast of steel. It crushed the cultists under its tracks. Bullets pinged off its hull. A rocket hit the side armor. The tank shook. 734 kept driving. He drove straight for the heart of the blue fire. The catastrophe was fully realized. The city was lost. The population was doomed to starvation or madness. The only victory available was to deny the enemy the biomass. It was the logic of the Imperium. If we cannot hold it, we burn it. The Chimera crashed through the final gate. It slammed into the base of the vent structure. The impact threw Dredd forward. He hit his head. Darkness took him for a moment. When he woke up, the Chimera was on fire. The back hatch was open. 734 was gone. Dredd crawled out. The heat was unbearable. His skin felt like it was blistering. He saw the silver machine. 734 was climbing the maintenance ladder of the coolant tank. He was taking heavy fire. Last bolts scorched his armor. A chunk of his helmet was blown away, revealing the human jaw underneath. It was Murphy's jaw. Boudica was screaming orders. Kill it. Kill the metal man. 734 did not stop. He reached the valve. It was a massive wheel of iron. He grabbed it with both hands. He pulled. The valve was rusted shut. Warning, the internal computer said. Strength insufficient. Structural failure imminent. 734 ignored the warning. He pushed his servos beyond the red line. He pushed past the limits of the machine. He tapped into the hysterical strength of the human mind. The memory of his family. The memory of his murder. The anger. The valve turned. A hiss of steam turned into a roar. The coolant pipe burst. Liquid nitrogen sprayed out, mixing with the superheated plasma. The reaction was instant. A white light blinded the world. The shockwave hit Dredd. It threw him backward, away from the blast. He tumbled into a drainage trench. Debris buried him. The last thing he saw was the silver figure standing in the center of the sun, dissolving into light. Then the silence came. Dredd woke up in the dark. He was alive. He dug himself out of the rubble. The air was hot, but not burning. He looked at Sector 4. It was gone. A crater of glass remained. The cult army was ash. Boudica was ash. He looked up at the sky. The purple clouds were burning. The firestorm had worked. The massive spores were disintegrating in the upper atmosphere. They fell as harmless black rain. The invasion was stalled. But the cost was absolute. The generator was destroyed. The hive had no power, no heat, no water processing. Dredd stood alone in the ruins. He checked his Vox. Static. Then a signal. Weak. Broken. Unit 734. Report. Dredd froze. He looked at the crater. At the bottom, half buried in the glass, was a torso. One arm was missing. The legs were gone. The head was cracked open, but the red eye still glowed. Dredd slid down the crater. He knelt beside the machine. You survived, Dredd said. He sounded surprised. Duty does not end, the machine whispered. Its voice was glitching. The human voice was bleeding through. Alex remains. Dredd looked at the ruin of the machine. He looked at the dark city. The Tyranids were stopped, but the hunger remained. The people would riot again. The darkness would breed new monsters. "We have a lot of work to do, partner," Dredd said. He grabbed the metal chassis and began to drag it out of the pit. The catastrophe had happened. The world was broken, but the law was still functioning. The inflection point was past. The stakes had shifted from saving the governor to saving the species. The enemy was revealed and then burned, but the infrastructure of civilization was gone. Now they had to survive the aftermath. The long, cold night was waiting, and in the dark, things that feared the light would begin to hunt. The strategic board was reset. No power, no shields, no food. Just a man and a broken machine against a dying world. The scholarly records would note this day as the Day of the Black Sun. The day Orestes Prime became a tomb, and the only thing keeping the ghost at bay was a stubborn refusal to die. The fallout from the destruction of Sector 4 did not clear for 6 months. The sky remained a bruised wall of grey clouds. The sun was a memory. The temperature on Orestes Prime dropped. It was not a sudden freeze. It was a slow, creeping cold that started in the toes and ended in the heart. The thermal exchange that Unit 734 and Marshal Dredd destroyed had been the lungs of the city. Now the city was holding its breath. The dead bodies in the streets did not rot. They froze. They became statues of ice and ash. Marshal Dredd dragged the remains of Unit 734 through the ruins of the transit district. It had been 3 days since the explosion. Dredd had not slept. He had not eaten. His boots were wrapped in rags because the leather had cracked in the cold. He pulled the silver torso on a sled made from a car door. The machine was heavy. It was dead weight. The red eye was dark. The internal reactor was silent. Dredd did not know if the man inside was still there. He only knew he could not leave the weapon behind. The law required evidence. The machine was the evidence. The journey back to Precinct 9 was a tour of hell. The gangs had returned, but they were not fighting for turf anymore. They were fighting for warmth. They burned furniture. They burned books. They burned the plastic walls of the hat blocks. The smoke was thick and toxic. Dredd saw a group of men gathered around a burning barrel. They were cooking something. It looked like a boot. They saw Dredd. They saw the golden eagle on his shoulder. They did not run. They picked up iron bars. They were too hungry to be afraid of the law. Dredd dropped the sled rope. He unholstered his shotgun. He had 2 shells left. He racked the slide. The sound was loud in the quiet street. Click-clack. The men looked at the gun. They looked at Dredd's eyes. They saw no mercy there. Dredd was not a man anymore. He was a statue of duty. The men lowered their bars. They stepped back into the shadows. Dredd picked up the rope. He continued to walk. When he reached the fortress, the gates were closed. The walls were scarred by laser fire. The Arbites inside were terrified. They thought the silence meant the end of the world. When they saw the Marshal walking out of the grey snow, dragging the silver hero, they cheered. It was a weak cheer. Their throats were dry. They opened the small sally-port door. Dredd pulled the machine inside. He collapsed on the floor. "Get the tech priest," Dredd whispered. Then he passed out. Margos Varnus came running. His red robes were dirty. His mechadendrites, the mechanical arms on his back, were twitching with excitement. He looked at the broken torso of Unit 734. He did not see a tragedy. He saw a puzzle. He saw a chance to improvise. The Adeptus Mechanicus usually forbids innovation. They believe all technology is already discovered. But Varnus was desperate. He was cold too. He needed his protector back. He dragged the machine to his workshop. The power was out. Varnus worked by the light of glow globes powered by chemical batteries. He did not have spare parts for a sophisticated cyborg. He did not have ceramide plating. He did not have microprocessors. He looked around the garage. He saw a damaged cargo loader. It was a yellow industrial machine used for lifting heavy crates. It was ugly. It was loud, but it was strong. Varnus began the surgery. He cut the hydraulic legs off the cargo loader. He welded them to the hips of Unit 734. The welding torch hissed in the dark. He did not have fine sensors for the hands. He found a mining drill and a heavy clamp from a salvage pile. He attached the clamp to the left arm. He kept the right arm as a weapon mount. He wired the power core of the cargo loader into the chest of the machine. It was crude. It was ugly. It was a monster of yellow and silver. Varnus connected a jumper cable to the machine's head. He prayed to the Omnissiah. He pulled the lever. Sparks flew. The smell of ozone filled the room. The machine jerked. The yellow leg slammed onto the floor. The clamp snapped open and closed. The red visor flickered. It turned on. It was dim. The logic systems were rebooting. "System check," the machine said. Its voice was deeper now. It sounded like grinding stones. Dredd walked into the room. He had slept for 4 hours. He had eaten a bowl of protein gruel. He looked at the machine. He did not flinch. "You look terrible," Dredd said. "Functionality is paramount. Aesthetics are irrelevant," Unit 734 replied. He looked at his new legs. They were heavy industrial stompers. He could not run, but he could walk through a brick wall. He looked at his left hand. It was a claw. "I require ammunition," 734 stated. "We have none," Dredd said. "The armory is empty. The heavy bolter rounds are gone. We have shotguns. We have shock mauls. That is all." "Then I require a melee designation," 734 said. He tested the drill attached to his forearm. It spun with a high-pitched whine. Accepted. The strategic situation had changed. The immediate threat of the Tyranids was gone. But the threat of collapse was absolute. The fortress was running out of water. The water recycling plant was 3 sectors away. It was controlled by the 8th PDF Regiment. The Planetary Defense Force was supposed to protect the people. But when the lights went out, Colonel Vance had gone rogue. He locked the doors of the water plant. He declared himself the warlord of Sector 3. He was selling water for gold, for weapons, and for slaves. This was the chain reaction. The destruction of central authority created little kingdoms of cruelty. If the Arbites did not stop Vance, other warlords would rise. The law would vanish. The Imperium would return one day to find a planet of savages. Dredd could not allow that. "We need water," Dredd said. "And we need to remind this city who is in charge. We are going to pay Colonel Vance a visit." They did not take a tank. They did not have fuel. They walked. The sight of the new Unit 734 was terrifying. He was 7 feet tall. He walked with a heavy, clanking rhythm. Thud, clank, thud, clank. The yellow paint of his legs was chipped and dirty. The silver of his chest was scorched black. He looked like the spirit of the dying city. The people hiding in the ruins watched him pass. They made the sign of the Aquila. They thought he was a punishment sent by the Emperor. They reached the water plant. It was a fortress. Vance had set up heavy stubbers on the walls. He had searchlights powered by the plant's hydroelectric turbines. He had soldiers in uniform. They looked well fed. They looked clean. This was the greatest crime of all. To be clean while the world died in filth. Dredd walked to the gate. He stood in the spotlight. He held up his badge. "Open the gate," Dredd shouted. "By order of the Adeptus Arbites." A soldier on the wall laughed. "The law is dead, old man. Go away before we freeze you." Unit 734 stepped into the light. The laughter stopped. The soldier had never seen a cyborg like this. It looked like a nightmare made of construction equipment. "Open the gate," 734 said. His voice was amplified. It shook the frost off the fence. "Or I will remove it." The soldier fired his laser gun. The red beam hit 734's chest. It left a black mark on the silver armor. 734 did not move. He calculated the structural integrity of the gate. It was chain link reinforced with plasteel bars. "Breaching," 734 stated. He walked forward. The heavy stubbers opened fire. Bullets sparked off his new yellow legs. The industrial steel was thick. It was designed to withstand falling rocks in a mine. Bullets were nothing. 734 reached the gate. He grabbed the bars with his clamp. He revved the hydraulic pistons. He pulled. The metal groaned. It shrieked. The concrete foundation cracked. 734 tore the gate off its hinges. He threw it aside. It weighed 2 tons. He threw it like a toy. The soldiers on the walls panicked. They threw grenades. The explosions washed over the machine. Shrapnel pinged off his visor. He kept walking. Dredd ran behind him, using the massive metal body as a moving shield. Dredd fired his shotgun at the gunman. He was efficient. 1 shot. 1 kill. They entered the courtyard. Colonel Vance came out of the main building. He was wearing a fur coat over his armor. He was holding a power sword. A power sword is a rare weapon. It is surrounded by an energy field that can cut through anything, even cyborg armor. Vance was a big man. He was arrogant. He thought he was a king. "You are trespassing in my kingdom," Vance shouted. "This is not a kingdom," Dredd said. "It is a crime scene." Vance charged. He was fast. He was a trained soldier. He swung the power sword at 734. The machine raised his left arm. The sword hit the industrial clamp. Blue energy sparked against the rough iron. The clamp was cut deep, but it was solid steel. It held. 734 swung his right arm. He did not shoot. He backhanded Vance. The blow knocked the colonel across the icy ground. Vance rolled and stood up. He was angry now. He lunged for Dredd. He knew Dredd was the weak link. Dredd parried with his shock maul. The power sword cut them all in half. The tip of the sword slashed Dredd's chest armor. Dredd fell back. Vance raised the sword for the killing blow. "Dead or alive," 734 said. The machine activated the mining drill on his arm. He lunged. The drill spun at 4,000 revolutions per minute. It hit Vance's sword arm. The noise was horrific. Metal and bone shattered. Vance screamed. He dropped the sword. 734 grabbed Vance by the neck with his clamp. He lifted the colonel into the air. Vance kicked his legs. "You are under arrest," 734 said. The soldiers stopped fighting. They saw their leader defeated. They saw the monster holding him. They dropped their guns. They surrendered. Dredd stood up. He held his bleeding chest. He looked at the soldiers. "Get out," Dredd said. "Leave your weapons. Go home." The soldiers ran. They did not look back. They were just men following orders. Now the orders were gone. Dredd and 734 entered the control room. It was warm inside. The turbines were humming. There was a tank of clean water. Dredd drank from a cup. It was the best thing he had ever tasted. "We have the water," Dredd said. "We can ration it. We can use it to bargain. This gives us power." Unit 734 plugged into the plant's computer. He was checking the logs. He wanted to see how Vance had distributed the water. He found the records. They were normal. But then he found a hidden file. It was encrypted with a high-level military code. 734 broke the code in 10 seconds. He read the file. His logic processor stalled. He read it again. "Marshal," 734 said. "Look at this." Dredd looked at the screen. It was a map of the lower sewers. It showed a pipeline. Vance had been pumping thousands of gallons of water into the deep underground, into the zones that were supposed to be empty. "Why?" Dredd asked. "Why waste water?" "He was not wasting it," 734 said. "He was paying a tribute." Dredd felt a chill that had nothing to do with the cold. Tribute to who? The screen showed a video log. It was grainy. It showed a dark tunnel. Something moved in the darkness. It was big. It had 4 arms. It was drinking the water. It was not a Genestealer. It was something older. A Genestealer patriarch. The leader of the cult. The father of the monsters. Vance was keeping it alive, Dredd realized. He was feeding it so it would not come up to the surface. He was buying time. "Now the water has stopped," 734 said. "The tribute has ended." As if the machine had summoned it, the floor vibrated. It was a deep rumble. It came from far below. "The creature is thirsty," 734 said. This was the inflection point. The victory over the warlord was not a victory. It was a mistake. By removing the corruption of Vance, they had removed the lid on the greater horror. The Genestealer cult had not been destroyed by the firestorm. Only the surface army was burned. The root was still deep in the earth. And now the root was waking up. Dredd looked at the monitors. The seismic sensors were spiking. The tremors were moving up. They were moving toward the water plant. The patriarch was coming to the source. "We cannot hold this place," Dredd said. "We are 2. They are a legion. We must destroy the plant," 734 calculated. "If we destroy the pumps, the water will flood the lower levels. It might drown them, or at least slow them down." "But the city needs this water," Dredd argued. "If we destroy it, the people die of thirst. If we do not," 734 said, "the people die of claws. Logic dictates the lesser of 2 evils." It was the cruel math of the Imperium. To save the soul, you must destroy the body. To save the future, you must burn the present. Dredd looked at the clean water. He hated this. He hated the choice. But he was a judge. He had to make the sentence. "Do it," Dredd said. 734 went to the main turbine. He did not have explosives. He used his strength. He jammed his drill arm into the drive shaft of the generator. The metal screeched. Sparks showered the room. The turbine began to wobble. The rhythm broke. The pressure built up. "Run," 734 said. They ran out of the building. They ran through the snow. Behind them, the water plant screamed. The turbine exploded. The dam broke. Millions of gallons of water rushed not into the pipes, but into the elevator shafts, into the deep tunnels. The ground shook as the flood hit the nest of the aliens. Dredd and 734 stood on a hill and watched. The lights of the plant went out. The city was darker than before. "We just killed thousands of people," Dredd said. "The ones who needed that water. We bought time," 734 replied. "Time is the only resource left." They walked back to the precinct. The walk was silent. The victory felt like ashes in their mouths. When they arrived, Magos Varnus was waiting at the gate. He was holding a data slate. He looked worried. "Marshal," Varnus said, "I have been monitoring the Vox. The destruction of the water plant. It sent a signal." "A distress signal?" Dredd asked. "No," Varnus said. "A seismic signal. The water hitting the magma chambers below. It created a geothermal pulse. It pierced the warp storm." Dredd's eyes widened. "That means the Navy can hear us." "Yes," Varnus said, "but they are not the ones who answered." "Who answered?" 734 asked. Varnus looked at the sky. A new ship had entered orbit. It was not an Imperial Navy frigate. It was a massive Gothic cathedral with engines. It was black and gold. It bore the symbol of a skull in a cog. "The Adeptus Mechanicus," Varnus whispered. "The Iron Hands chapter is with them. They have come to reclaim the planet." "That is good news," Dredd said. "Reinforcements." Varnus shook his head. "You do not understand. They did not come for us. They came for the archaeotech. They came for the source of the unit's chassis. They detected the ancient signal when I repaired him. They are here to purge the heresy." Dredd looked at 734. The machine was a mix of Dark Age technology and garbage. To the strict dogma of the Iron Hands, he was an abomination, an insult to the machine god. "They will not see a hero," Varnus said. "They will see a monster. They will deactivate him. They will dissect him. And then they will burn the city to hide the evidence." Dredd looked at his partner. The machine had saved his life. It had saved the city twice. It was more human than the colonel they had just killed. "They are not touching him," Dredd said. 734 processed the data. He understood the threat. The Iron Hands were space marines. They were post-human warriors who replaced their own flesh with metal because they hated weakness. They were ruthless. They were logic, pure and cold. "I am in violation of the Cult Mechanicus," 734 stated. "My existence is a crime." "You are the law," Dredd said, "and I am the judge. I say you are innocent." The sky roared. Drop pods were falling. They were not spores this time. They were steel pods slamming into the upper hive. The Iron Hands had arrived. They were not landing to help the starving. They were landing to secure the technology. The strategic chain reaction was complete. The desperate repair of the machine had summoned a force that could destroy them all. The enemy was no longer the alien or the criminal. The enemy was the Imperium itself. The bureaucracy had arrived and it had a bolter. "We need to hide," Dredd said. Negative 734 said. "We cannot hide from their sensors. We must negotiate." "You cannot negotiate with Iron Hands," Varnus said. "They do not have emotions. They only have logic." "Then we must speak their language," 734 said. "How?" Dredd asked. 734 pointed to his head. "In my memory banks, the old files, the ones I cannot access. There is data there. Data from the Dark Age. Data about the STC, the standard template construct, the blueprint for all technology. That is what Varnus found in the ruins. That is what I am." Varnus gasped. "If that is true, you are the most valuable object in the sector. And the most dangerous," Dredd added. The drop pods hit the ground a mile away. The impact shook the snow from the ruins. The Space Marines were here. They would march on the precinct. They would scan everything. "We have 1 hour," Dredd estimated. 734 looked at his drill arm. He looked at his clamp. He was broken. He was ugly. But he was ready. Directive 4 updated. 734 said, "Preserve the truth." The saviors were arrived, but the saviors were executioners. The story had shifted from survival against nature to survival against dogma. The irony was heavy. The machine that fought for the Emperor was now the target of the Emperor's angels. Dredd had to decide how far he would go to protect his partner. He had fought gangs. He had fought aliens. Now, he would have to fight the symbols of his own faith. The snow continued to fall. It covered the tracks of the drop pods. The long night of Orestes Prime was about to get much louder. The silence of the freeze was broken by the heavy, rhythmic marching of ceramite boots. The Iron Hands were coming, and they did not know the meaning of the word mercy. They only knew purge. Dredd checked his shotgun. 2 shells. It was not enough. It was never enough. But he stood by the gate anyway. He stood next to the yellow and silver giant, two broken things against the galaxy. "Let them come," Dredd said. Unit 734 cycled his optics. He engaged combat mode. His internal reactor hummed. He was ready to serve the public trust, protect the innocent, and uphold the law, even if the law was coming to kill him. The snow around Precinct Fortress 9 did not melt when the drop pods landed. It vaporized. The heat from the retro thrusters turned the ice into a thick fog. Through the fog came the sound of heavy metal striking stone. It was a rhythmic, crushing sound. It was the sound of the iron hands. They did not march like soldiers. They marched like piston-driven engines. Marshal Dredd stood at the ruined gate. He was shivering. His armor was cracked. His shotgun was empty. Beside him stood Unit 734. The machine was a wreck of yellow industrial parts and silver ceramite. The mining drill on its arm spun slowly. It was a nervous tick. The machine was processing fear, even if it did not feel it. Margos Varnus hid behind them. He was reciting binary prayers. He knew what was coming. The iron hands were the sons of the Gorgon. They believed the flesh was weak. They replaced their hands, their eyes, and their hearts with bionics. They were cold logic made manifest. To them, Unit 734 was not a hero. It was a blasphemy. It was a thinking machine that had not been sanctioned by Mars. The fog broke. 5 giants stepped forward. They were 7 feet tall, but they looked wider in their black power armor. Their left hands were silver metal. The leader wore a servo harness with a heavy bolter mounted on his back. His face was a mask of grills and cables. One red lens glowed where his right eye should be. This was Iron Father Carden. "Identify," the Iron Father's voice boomed. It was not a human voice. It was a Voxcaster output. It sounded like a tank grinding gears. "I am Marshal Dredd, Adeptus Arbeit. I hold jurisdiction here." The Iron Father did not look at Dredd. He looked at the yellow and silver machine. His sensors cycled. He zoomed in on the chest unit. He saw the unauthorized welding. He saw the mix of ancient tech and garbage. "Target identified," Carden stated. "Silas Animus. Abominable intelligence. Threat level extremis." Unit 734 stepped forward. He did not raise his weapon. He initiated a handshake protocol. It was a remnant of his police programming. "I am Unit 734, he said. "I am a peace officer. I am requesting assistance." The Iron Father raised his Stormbolter. He did not hesitate. He did not negotiate. The logic was simple. The machine spoke with a mind of its own. Therefore, the machine was a heresy. "Purge it," Carden ordered. "Wait." Dredd stepped in front of the bolter. He was a small man compared to the Space Marine. He looked like a child standing in front of a train. "This unit is evidence," Dredd shouted. "It is the property of the Adeptus Arbeit. Under the Lex Imperialis, Section 405, you cannot seize evidence without a warrant from the High Lords." The Iron Father paused. He processed the statement. The Iron Hands respected law. They respected order, but they respected the machine god more. "The Lex Imperialis applies to humans," Carden said. "That is not human. That is a ghoul in a steel shell. Step aside, Arbiter, or you will be categorized as a heretic accomplice." Dredd did not move. He knew he was going to die, but he had a code. You do not betray your partner, even if your partner is made of scrap metal. Unit 734 calculated the odds. If the Space Marines fired, Dredd would die. The probability was 100%. The machine could not allow that. Protocol 1. Protect the innocent. Dredd was the innocent. "Officer Dredd, stand down," 734 said. "No," Dredd said. The Iron Father tightened his grip on the trigger. The storm bolter whined as the ammunition feeder cycled. This was the small choice. Dread refused to move. It was a stubborn act of an old man. It should have ended with a red mist and a pile of meat. But it did not, because the ground exploded. The choice to stand and argue had consumed 3 minutes. Those 3 minutes allowed the seismic tremors from the drop pods to travel deep into the earth. They reached the flooded tunnels where the water plant had emptied its reservoir. They reached the Patriarch. The creature had been flushed out of its nest. It was angry. It was hungry. And now it heard the heavy thud of the Space Marines. To a Tyranid, a Space Marine is not a threat. It is a concentrated source of high-quality biomass. The courtyard floor shattered. Concrete slabs flew into the air. A fountain of black mud and water sprayed up. From the hole came a nightmare. The Patriarch was massive. It was purple and blue, with 4 arms and claws as long as swords. It was followed by hundreds of hybrids. They swarmed up like ants. The strategic situation inverted instantly. The execution became a desperate defense. Ambush, the Iron Father stated. He did not panic. He simply switched targets. The storm bolter roared. Explosive shells hit the Patriarch. They detonated against its chitin armor. The creature shrieked. It was a psychic scream. It hit the minds of the men like a physical hammer. Dread fell to his knees, clutching his head. Margot's Varnus collapsed, his nose bleeding. The Space Marines were resistant. Their psycho-conditioning held. They formed a firing line. Bolters barked in unison. The noise was deafening. The hybrids were torn apart, but there were too many of them. They flooded over the black armor of the giants. Unit 734 stood in the middle of the chaos. His logic center was overloaded. Threat detected. Xenos. Threat detected. Astartes. Priority conflict. He looked at the Iron Father. A Genestealer purist strain had jumped onto the Marine's back. Its diamond-hard claws were tearing at the power pack. If the reactor breached, the Marine would explode. The Iron Father could not reach it. He was busy fighting 3 other monsters with his power axe. 734 made a decision. It was not programmed. It was not logical. It was moral. 8, he charged. His yellow industrial legs stomped the ground. He did not run to escape. He ran to the Iron Father. The machine grabbed the Genestealer on the Marine's back. He used his clamp. He crushed the alien's spine. He ripped it off and threw it into the mud. The Iron Father turned. He saw the machine. He saw the dead alien. For a microsecond, the logic of the Space Marine faltered. The abomination had saved him. Target priority updated, Carden said. Xenos first, machine second. They fought back to back. The giant black warrior and the broken silver cop. It was a tableau of the impossible. Dread recovered from the psychic scream. He picked up a fallen bolt pistol from a dead hybrid. It was too heavy for him, but he fired it anyway. He covered Varnus, who was trying to close the blast doors. The Patriarch saw his children dying. He focused on the strongest enemy, the Iron Father. The monster leapt. It moved faster than the eye could follow. It tackled Carden. The Space Marine and the Alien Lord rolled in the snow. The power axe fell. The Patriarch's claws dug into the ceramite chest plate. Sparks and black oil flew. Cardan was strong, but the Patriarch was stronger. It was an apex predator. It opened its jaws to bite the Marine's head off. 734 saw the danger. He had no ammunition. His drill was jammed with bone. He had one weapon left, the data spike in his fist. It was meant for interfacing with computers, but it was sharp. 734 jumped. He landed on the Patriarch. He drove the spike into the creature's neck. He did not just stab. He discharged his internal battery. All of it. 50,000 volts of electricity surged through the spike. It went straight into the alien's nervous system. The patriarch convulsed. It smelled of burning ozone and lobster shell. It shrieked one last time and went limp. The feedback loop fried 734 systems. His vision went black. His servos locked. He fell off the dead beast. He lay in the snow, smoking. The hybrids, seeing their father dead, broke. The psychic link was severed. They became animals. The remaining iron hands slaughtered them in seconds. The silence returned to the courtyard. Dredd limped over to 734. The machine was silent. The red eye was dark. "Is he dead?" Dredd asked. The Iron Father stood up. His armor was gouged. He bled from a wound in his neck. He looked down at the pile of junk that had saved him. A tech marine walked over. He scanned 734 with a complex device. "Reading faint life signs," the tech marine said. "Not biological. The machine spirit is still active. It is dormant. Destroy it," a sergeant said. "It is still heresy." The Iron Father held up his hand. The metal hand. He looked at the dead patriarch. He looked at the spike hole in its neck. "Negative," Carden said. He looked at Dredd. The massive red lens of his eyes zoomed in on the tired marshal. "You claim this object is evidence," Carden said. "Yes," Dredd said. "Evidence of what?" "Of loyalty," Dredd said. "Of duty." The Iron Father was silent for a long time. His internal cogitator was weighing the sins against the utility. The machine had killed a patriarch. That was a feat worthy of a hero. But the machine was an AI. That was a crime worthy of death. The logic of the Iron Hands is cold, but it is also practical. They hate waste. To destroy a weapon that can kill a patriarch is waste. "We will take it," Carden said. "Not as scrap, as a prisoner." "We," Dredd asked. "You are coming too, Arbiter," Carden said. "You are the handler. The machine seems to respond to your voice commands. We require you to unlock its databanks. We need to know where it came from. We need to know how a piece of Dark Age technology ended up in a junkyard." "I'm not leaving my city," Dredd said. "The people need me." "Your city is dead," Carden stated. "Look around." Dredd looked. The fortress was ruined. The walls were breached. The remaining Arbites were dead or dying. The food was gone. The water was gone. The Genestealer cult was broken, but the population was starving. "We are establishing a martial law zone in the upper spire," Carden continued. "We will process the survivors. The weak will be cold. The strong will be turned into servitors or drafted. This precinct is no longer viable." It was the hard truth. The Imperium does not save everyone. It saves the useful. Dredd touched the cold metal shoulder of 734. He could not leave him to the Iron Hands alone. They would dissect him. They would torture the ghost of Murphy. "I will go," Dredd said. "But only if Magos Varnus comes too. He knows the repairs. He knows the wiring." The Iron Father nodded. "Acceptable. The Magos will be debriefed by the Martian priesthood. If he is found to be a heretic, he will be servitorized." It was the best offer they were going to get. The Iron Hands loaded Unit 734 onto a Thunderhawk gunship. It took 4 of them to lift the heavy yellow chassis. They laid him on the deck plates. Dredd sat next to him. The ramp closed. The engines roared. As the gunship lifted off, Dredd looked out the viewport. He saw Precinct 9 shrinking below. It was a black scar in the white snow. He saw the city of Orestes Prime. It was a graveyard. The fires were going out. The story of the city was ending. The story of the machine was moving to a new stage. The Thunderhawk flew up. It pierced the cloud layer. For the first time in months, Dredd saw the stars. They were cold and distant. They flew toward the massive strike cruiser in orbit. The fist of iron. It was a flying cathedral of war. Inside the ship, the air smelled of incense and oil. They were met by a phalanx of tech priests. They wore red robes and had metal faces. They chatted in binary code when they saw 734. They wanted to take him apart right there on the flight deck. "Halt," Ironfather Carden ordered. "This asset is under my protection. It is to be placed in a stasis cell. No one touches it without my command." The tech priests were angry, but they obeyed. A Space Marine captain outranks a tech priest. They dragged 734 to a holding cell. It was a glass cylinder. They suspended him in a magnetic field. Dredd was given a small room nearby. It was a cell too, but with a bed. Hours passed. Dredd sat on the bunk. He cleaned his shotgun. It was a nervous habit. He felt useless. He was a marshal of the law. Here, he was just a fleshy pet of the Space Marines. Then, the lights in the corridor dimmed. The door to his cell slid open. It was not a guard. It was the tech Marine who had scanned 734 on the surface. His name was Ferox. He had a mechanical arm with a bundle of optic cables. "Arbiter," Ferox said. His voice was a whisper of static. "Come with me." "Where?" Dredd asked. "To the cell," Ferox said. "The Iron Father has questions. He cannot ask them on the bridge. The chaplains are watching." Dredd followed Ferox. They went back to the stasis cell. Carden was there. He was standing in the dark, looking at the floating body of 734. The machine was still offline. "Why did it save me?" Carden asked. He did not turn around. "It's a cop," Dredd said. "It protects people." "I am not a person," Carden said. "I'm a weapon, and I was about to destroy it. Logic dictates it should have let me die. Self-preservation is the primary drive of all biological and mechanical life. Murphy is different," Dredd said. "Murphy?" Carden asked. "That's his name. The man inside." Carden turned. His red eye glowed. "There is no man inside. We scanned it. The brain is dead tissue. It is a processor. Nothing more." "You are wrong," Dredd said. "Prove it," Carden said. "Wake it up." Ferox unlocked the stasis field. He connected a power cable to 734's chest. He bypassed the safety limiters. He jump-started the core. Unit 734 twitched. The yellow legs kicked. The silver chest heaved. The visor flickered. "System reboot." "Complete," the voice said. It was weak. 734 looked around. He saw the ship. He saw the giants. He saw Dredd. Location: high orbit, 734 deduced. Status: prisoner. "Correct," Carden said. "Identify your source code. Who built you? What STC pattern do you follow?" 734 looked at the Iron Father. He accessed his deep memory, the files that were usually locked. The shock from the Patriarch had loosened the firewalls. "I was built by OCP," 734 said. "Old Detroit, Earth." Carden looked at Ferox. "Old Detroit? Is that a forge world?" "Unknown," Ferox said. "The term Earth refers to Holy Terror. But the designation OCP does not match any known manufactorum of the last 10,000 years. It is pre-imperial," Carden whispered. "It is from the Age of Strife, or before." He looked at 734 with a mix of awe and horror. "You are a relic of the Dark Age. You are older than the Imperium." "I'm a police officer," 734 repeated. Carden stepped closer. "If you are from the Dark Age, you possess data. You possess the coordinates of lost worlds. You possess the schematics of forgotten weapons. I have traffic laws," 734 said. "I have criminal codes." "Access them," Carden ordered. "Dump your memory core." 734 paused. He looked at Dredd. Dredd shook his head slightly. If he gave them everything, they would wipe him. They would turn him into a navigation computer. Directive 4, 734 said, "Classified." Carden drew his combat knife. It was the size of a sword. "We can cut it out of you." Dredd stepped forward. "You saw him fight. You saw him kill the Patriarch. He is not a library. He is a soldier. If you wipe him, you lose the fighter." "And why do I need one broken antique fighter?" Carden asked. "I have a company of Astartes." "Because we are going to the Ghoul Stars," Ferox interrupted. Carden spun around. "Silence, Tech Marine." Ferox did not silence. He looked to the data slate in his hand. "The Crusade fleet is gathering. The Chapter Master has ordered a push into the Pale Wasting. We are going to fight the Necrons." Necrons, Dredd thought. The undying ones. Machines that make the iron hands look like soft toys. "If we are fighting Necrons," Ferox said, "we need something that understands ancient machine logic. Something that can hack their networks. Something that is immune to their flare virus." He pointed at 734. "This unit is immune. It is not cogitator-based. It is a hybrid. It has a human soul in a digital cage. It is the perfect weapon against the Necrons." Carden looked at 734. He sheathed his knife. The logic was sound. The crusade into the Ghoul Stars was a suicide mission. They needed every advantage. "Very well," Carden said. "The unit remains active, but it stays in the brig. And you, Arbiter, you will train it." "Train it?" Dredd asked. "It fights like a brawler," Carden said. "It fights like a brute. If it is to serve the Iron Hands, it must fight like a machine. You will teach it our doctrines. You will teach it to hate the flesh." "I can't teach it that," Dredd said. "I'm flesh." Carden looked at Dredd's cracked armor and bleeding face. "We can fix that," he said ominously. The Fist of Iron was not alone. Dozens of ships were gathering. They were leaving the dead world of Orestes Prime. They were heading into the black unknown. The strategic scale had shifted again, from a city to a planet, and now to a sector-wide crusade. Unit 734 had survived the purge, but at a cost. He was now a conscript in the most brutal chapter of the Space Marines, and the enemy waiting in the dark was not a biological swarm. It was the mirror image of himself. The Necrons were soulless machines who wanted to kill all life. 734 was a machine who wanted to protect it. The massive outcome of the small choice was this. By refusing to step aside, Dredd had not just saved his friend. He had inserted a wild card into a war that had been stagnant for centuries. He had brought a cop to a war zone, and the Necrons had never been read their rights. But inside the machine, the ghost was restless. The surge of electricity had damaged the inhibitor chip. The memories were leaking. Murphy remembered a wife. He remembered a son. He remembered a face. And he looked at the cold, metal faces of the Iron Hands and felt a strange emotion. Pity. They chose to be machines, he thought. I had no choice. This internal conflict would be the seed, the definition of humanity. The Iron Hands sought to lose it. RoboCop fought to keep it. And in the Ghoul Stars, that difference would decide the fate of the crusade. As the ship entered the warp, reality twisted. Dredd looked at his hands. They were trembling. He was old. He was tired. He looked at Carden. You said you could fix me, Dredd said. Carden nodded. He pointed to the medical bay. Dredd walked toward it. He looked back at the 734 one last time. Don't go anywhere, partner, Dredd said. I will be here, 734 replied. Dredd entered the bay. The door closed. He had made his choice. To stay with the machine, to fight in this war, he had to become strong enough to survive it. He had to give up a piece of his humanity to save the humanity of the machine. It was the ultimate sacrifice for a judge, to break the law of nature to uphold the law of justice. The screen faded to black, leaving only the sound of a surgical saw and the low hum of the warp drive. The void around the Ghoul Stars was not black. It was a sickening shade of bruised violet. The physical laws of the universe were thin here. Light bent around corners it should not see. Gravity tasted like copper in the mouth. The crusade fleet of the Iron Hands had been fighting for 8 months. They had burned 12 worlds. They had lost 3 ships. Now they orbited Antium, a dead world of black obsidian and green lightning. This was the crown world of the Necron dynasty. This was the heart of the infection. The strategy room on the Fist of Iron was silent. The hololith showed the surface of the planet. It was covered in geometric structures, pyramids the size of mountains, monoliths that floated in the air. The Iron Father Cardan stood by the table. His armor was scarred from 100 battles. Beside him stood Marshal Dredd. Dredd was different now. The surgery had taken 20 hours. His left arm was bionic, stripped of synthetic skin to show the cold piston mechanism. His right eye was a red sensor lens, identical to Cardan's. His spine was reinforced with adamantium rods. He breathed with the hiss of a mechanical lung. He was no longer just a man. He was an instrument of the chapter. Unit 734 stood in the corner. The Iron Hands had upgraded him. His yellow industrial legs were gone, replaced with heavy combat treads from a cataphron breacher. His chest was reinforced with layered ceramite. His auto-cannon had been replaced with a twin-linked heavy bolter. He looked like a tank that had learned to walk like a man. But inside the metal skull, the ghost was screaming. The proximity to the Necrons was causing glitches. The Necrons used a carrier wave to control their armies. 734 could hear it. It sounded like a billion voices whispering a single math equation. "The enemy is adapting," Cardan said. His voice was a grinder of gravel. "Every time we deploy a tactic, they counter it within minutes. We use drop pods. They activate aerial grids. We use terminators. They deploy destroyer cults. They are processing our war protocols faster than we can invent them." "They are machines," Dredd said. His voice had lost its rasp. It was metallic now. "They calculate probability. We need to do something improbable." "Probability is the only truth," Cardan argued. "We are losing because our flesh is still too loud. Our reactions are slowed by biological doubt. We must purge the remaining weakness." The ship shook. A green beam from the planet's surface had clipped the void shields. The alarm klaxons howled. "Deployment is authorized," Cardan announced. "We strike at the central tomb complex. We decapitate the Overlord. It is a 12% chance of success. Logic dictates we take it, because the alternative is 0% survival." The drop to Antium was a fall into a nightmare. The drop pods screamed as they hit the atmosphere. The Necron anti-air fire was green firework. It dissolved the armor of the pods. Dredd watched the telemetry of his squad. 3 pods were vaporized before they touched the ground. 30 Space Marines died in a second. There was no pain, just deletion. Dredd's pod slammed into the black sand. The explosive bolts blew the doors. He ran out. The gravity was heavy. He felt the weight of his new skeleton. He raised his storm shotgun. It was a massive weapon, fed by a belt from his backpack. He fired at the shapes moving in the mist. The Necrons marched in perfect silence. They were skeletons of living metal. Their eyes burned with green witch fire. They held Gauss flares. They did not aim like men. They simply pointed and erased. A beam hit a Space Marine next to Dredd. The Marine did not fall. He unraveled. His armor peeled away layer by layer. His flesh turned to dust. His bones turned to ash. In 2 seconds, a hero of the Imperium was nothing but a shadow on the sand. Unit 734 rolled out of a heavy transport lander. His treads crushed the obsidian rocks. He did not fire immediately. He was scanning. The Necron carrier wave was loud here. It was trying to overwrite his code. It was telling him to sleep. It was telling him to submit. Override, 734 said. Directive 4 remains active. He unleashed his heavy bolters. The explosive shells hit the Necron line. The skeletons shattered, but they did not stay dead. The metal flowed like liquid mercury. Arms reattached to shoulders. Heads rolled back onto necks. This was the horror of the Necron. They were immortal. To kill them, you had to destroy them utterly. Ironfather Carden led the charge. He wielded a power axe that crackled with blue energy. He smashed a Necron immortal into scrap. He looked at the pyramid ahead. It was a mile high. It pulsed with green light. The entrance is defended by Lich Guard, Carden shouted over the vox. Focus fire. Break the line. The battle lasted for 6 hours. It was a grinder. The Iron Hands lost half their company, but they pushed forward. They did not feel fear. They did not stop for the wounded. If a Marine fell, his brothers took his ammunition and kept walking. It was brutal efficiency. Dread found himself falling into the rhythm. He stopped thinking about the men who died. He only thought about the objective. His human brain was becoming a tactical computer. He felt a cold comfort in it. No grief, no hunger, just the mission. They breached the pyramid gate. The inside was a maze of black stone. There were no lights, only the glow of the circuitry in the walls. The air was freezing. It was the cold of the grave. We must find the command node, Carden said. They moved deep into the tomb. The architecture was wrong. Hallways twisted upside down. Stairs led to nowhere. Unit 734 took the lead. His ancient sensors could see things the Space Marines could not. He saw the data streams flowing in the walls. This way, 734 said. He pointed to a blank wall. There is no door, a sergeant said. There is a data port, 734 replied. He extended his data spike. He jammed it into the stone. The wall dissolved into pixels of green light. A path opened. The Iron Hands looked at the machine with suspicion. How did you know? Carden asked. Their code is not different from mine, 734 said. It is just older. They entered the inner sanctum. It was a vast chamber suspended over a pit of green fire. Bridges of hard light connected floating platforms. In the center sat a throne. On the throne sat Overlord Xantus. Xantus was huge. His body was gold and royal blue. He wore a cape made of metallic scales. He held a staff that could snuff out stars. He did not stand up when the Space Marines entered. He looked at them with boredom. You are persistent vermin, Xantus said. His voice was not a sound. It was a vibration in their skulls. You come to my house. You break my toys. And for what? To protect a rotting corpse on a golden chair. Open fire, Carden roared. The Iron Hands fired. Bolters, plasma guns, melter beams. The air exploded with violence. But Xantus raised a hand. A wall of time dilation appeared. The bullets stopped in mid-air. The plasma dissipated. The attacks froze in time. Xantus stood up. He walked through the frozen bullets. He looked at Carden. You call yourselves Iron Hands, the Overlord said. You cut off your flesh. You replace it with crude steel. You worship the machine. You aspire to be cold, to be logical, to be eternal. He gestured to his own golden body. Look at me. I am the perfection you seek. I have no lungs to fail. I have no heart to break. My logic is absolute. My form is undying. Why do you fight me? We are the same. Carden lowered his axe. The words hit him harder than a weapon. He looked at his own bionic arm. He looked at the Necron. The Overlord was right. The Necrons were the endpoint of the Iron Hands philosophy. If the flesh is weak, then the Necron is the ultimate strength. Join us, Xantus offered. It was the unavoidable offer. We can transfer your consciousness. We can give you bodies of living metal. No more pain, no more death. You will not just serve the machine. You will become it. The other Space Marines hesitated. The offer was seductive. It was everything they trained for. To be free of the weak biological shell. Dredd felt the pull too. His new lung hitched. His bionic eye whirred. To be metal forever. To never be cold or hungry again. It sounded like justice. It sounded like order. But then Unit 734 stepped forward. The time dilation field slowed him, but it did not stop him. He was struggling against the heavy gravity. His treads sparked on the light bridge. Negative 734 said. Xantus looked at the primitive cyborg. And what are you? A scavenger's golem. A trash can with a gun. Do you not want perfection, little machine? I am not a machine, 734 said. Xantus laughed. A dry digital sound. You are wires and code. You have no soul. I have a directive, 734 said. Serve the public trust. Protect the innocent. Uphold the law. And who are the innocent here? Xantus asked. 734 pointed his heavy bolter at Carden. Not at the enemy. At the Iron Father. He is, 734 said. Carden snapped out of his trance. He looked at the gun pointed at him. He looked at the Necron. He realized the trap. The Necron was using logic to defeat them. But 734 was using something else. He was using a concept that logic could not process. Loyalty to a flawed being. If the Iron Hands accepted the offer, they would die. They would lose their humanity completely. They would become slaves to the Catan. The ultimate weakness was not flesh. The ultimate weakness was surrendering the struggle. The flesh is weak, Carden recited, but the spirit is strong. Carden swung his axe. He smashed the time dilation projector. The frozen bullets dropped to the floor. The battle resumed. This time, it was chaotic. Xantus was fast. He teleported around the room. He cut down 3 Space Marines in a second. His staff disintegrated their armor. Dredd fired his shotgun, but the pellets bounced off the gold plating. We cannot kill him, Dredd shouted. He repairs too fast. We do not need to kill him. 734 calculated. We need to disconnect him. 734 revved his treads. He did not aim for the Overlord. He aimed for the throne. The throne was the control node. It was the source of the carrier wave. Xantus saw the move. He teleported in front of 734. He raised his staff. You are obsolete, Xantus said. The staff came down. It hit 734's shoulder. The heavy bolter was sheared off. The ceramite armor melted. 734 collapsed. His system screamed. Critical failure. Power at 5%. Xantus raised the staff for the killing blow. Dredd jumped. He did not have power armor. He did not have a force field. He had a shotgun and a bad attitude. He tackled the Necron Lord. It was like tackling a statue. Dredd broke 3 ribs on impact, but he threw Xantus off balance. Run, Murphy, Dredd screamed. He used the name, the human name. 734 heard it. The name bypassed the logic gates. It accessed the hidden partition, the memory of the man, the memory of the pain. The machine stood up. It did not use its treads. It dragged itself. It grabbed the data cables hanging from the throne. Xantus threw Dredd across the room. Dredd hit the wall and slid down, leaving a smear of blood. Xantus turned to the machine. "Stop," Xantus commanded. 734 jammed his data spike into the main trunk of the throne. "Connection established," 734 said. He did not upload a virus. He did not upload a logic bomb. The Necron antivirus was too strong for that. He uploaded the one thing the Necrons had deleted 60 million years ago. He uploaded the human experience. He uploaded the memory of his death, the feeling of bullets tearing through skin, the sorrow of losing his family, the fear, the love, the confusion. He poured the raw, chaotic, illogical data of a human soul into the pristine mathematical network of the Necron tomb. It was poison. The Necron network could not process emotion. It tried to categorize grief as a variable. It failed. It tried to solve love as an equation. It divided by zero. Xantus froze. He clutched his head. He screamed. It was not a physical scream. It was a digital crash. The green lights in the tomb turned red. The hovering monoliths outside fell from the sky. The army of skeletons stopped moving. They began to twitch. They were experiencing a billion years of suppressed panic all at once. "System overload," 734 stated. The throne began to overheat. The energy core was destabilizing. The pyramid was going to explode. Carden ran to Dredd. He picked up the broken marshal. "Retreat," Carden ordered. "The tomb is collapsing." They ran. They ran through the twisting hallways. The walls were shaking. Debris fell around them. They reached the exit just as the inner sanctum detonated. A green fireball chased them out. The shockwave threw them down the steps of the pyramid. They lay in the black sand. Above them, the pyramid cracked. Beams of light shot into the sky. The Necron fleet in orbit went dark. Their control signal was gone. The Iron Hands ships began to tear them apart. It was over. The logic of the machine had been defeated by the chaos of the man. Dredd coughed. Blood sprayed on his metal chin. He looked at 734. The machine was lying on its side. Its chest was open. Sparks died in the cold air. Carden walked over. He looked at the destroyed machine. He looked at the burning pyramid. He had learned a lesson that day, a lesson his Primarch had forgotten. "Is it functional?" Carden asked. Dredd crawled to his partner. He checked the diagnostics. The screen was cracked, but a single line of text scrolled. "Status, sleeping." "He is alive," Dredd said. Carden nodded. He removed his helmet. It was a rare gesture. His face was scarred and pale. He looked at the horizon where the sun was rising. A real sun, not the violet void. The Necron dampening field was gone. "We came to purge the weak," Carden said. "We thought the flesh was the weakness. We were wrong. The flesh is the backup drive." He tapped his own temple. "Without the man, the machine has no purpose. Without the pain, there is no victory." The Iron Hands collected the body of Unit 734. They did not drag him this time. They carried him on a shield. They carried him like a fallen brother. Dredd walked beside them. He was limping. His new bionics were damaged. He would need more surgery. He would never be fully human again. But he was not a machine either. He was something in between. They boarded the Thunderhawks. The fist of iron waited above. The crusade would continue. There were other worlds, other monsters. But the Battle of Antium changed the Iron Hands. They stopped removing their hearts. They kept them locked in cages of steel, just in case they needed to feel something to win. In the medical bay of the strike cruiser, Dredd sat by the repair cradle. 734 was hooked up to the life support. The tech marines were reverent now. They applied sacred oils to his joints. Dredd leaned in close. "Wake up, Murphy," Dredd whispered. The red visor flickered. It was weak, but steady. "Marshal," the voice rasped. "What is the status?" "The bad guys are gone," Dredd said. "We won." "And the law?" Dredd smiled. It was a grim smile. "The law is safe. 734 processed this." His internal chronometer reset. "Good," he said. "I have a new directive." "What is it?" Directive 5, 734 said. "Find a way home." Dredd looked at the stars outside the viewport. They were far from Earth, far from Detroit, far from Orestes Prime. But the galaxy was a big place. "We'll find it," Dredd said. "Dead or alive, we'll find it." The ship's engines roared. They jumped into the warp. The story of the revolt was over. The story of the crusade was over. The story of the long walk home had just begun. And somewhere in the databanks of the Imperium, a new file was created. It was not labeled heresy. It was not labeled Xenos. It was labeled simply the Enforcers. The record you are reading was found 300 years later. It was buried deep in the data vaults of the Iron Hands Chapter Fortress on the planet Medusa. It is a restricted file. Only the high-ranking Iron Fathers are allowed to open it. The file is not labeled with a battle name. It is labeled simply as the exception. The Iron Hands are known for being cold. They replace their hands with metal. They replace their eyes with lenses. They believe that feelings are a weakness. But in the Hall of Heroes, there is a statue that does not fit. It is not a statue of a space marine. It is a statue of a primitive machine. It stands on two heavy treads. It has a heavy bolter on one arm and a mining drill on the other. Its chest is made of silver ceramite. The face has a visor that is dark stone. Young scouts often ask who this machine is. The veterans do not say it is a hero. They say it is a warning. They say it is the machine that taught them the value of the ghost. Because of this machine, the Clan Rokan Company changed their rituals. They no longer remove the part of the brain that feels fear. They keep it. They say you must know fear so you can crush it. This is the legacy of the battle in the Ghoul Stars, the day the logic failed and the human soul saved the day. On the world of Orestes Prime, there is nothing left but snow and ruins. The Imperium abandoned the planet. It was too damaged. The air was too thin. But in the center of the dead city, in the ruins of Precinct 9, there is a shrine. It was built by the survivors before they left. It is made of scrap metal and frozen bones. It depicts a judge and a silver giant. Travelers who pass by the system say that the Vox channels are haunted. They do not hear ghosts screaming. They hear a loop of old radio chatter. It repeats the same message over and over. It says, "Calling all units. Officer needs assistance. Sector 4. 'Tis distress call that never ends." The tech priests say it is just an echo of the machine spirit. But the superstitious void-born sailors say it is a lighthouse. They say it guides the lost ships home. Marshal Dredd was never found. The official records list him as missing in action. But the galaxy is a big place. There are many dark corners where the light of the Emperor does not reach. In these lawless zones, stories are told. The pirates of the Calixis sector tell a story of a black ship. It is a small vessel, patched together with parts from a dozen different hulls. It does not fly an imperial flag. It flies a flag with a simple silver shield. The pirates say that if you prey on the weak, the black ship comes. They say a man with a metal leg and a machine that cannot die board your ship. They do not steal your cargo. They do not take your gold. They hold a trial. The trial takes 10 seconds. Then the execution happens. They leave the ships drifting in the dark, with a single message painted on the hull in white paint. The message is simple. You have the right to remain silent. The Inquisition has tried to hunt this ship. Inquisitor Vex spent 60 years chasing the legend. He called it a rogue element. He called it a threat to the established order. But every time he got close, the black ship vanished. It jumped into the warp using coordinates that did not make sense. It was looking for a star system that was not on any map. It was looking for a place called Delta City. Vex eventually gave up. In his final journal, he wrote that the galaxy needs monsters to fight monsters. He wrote that the machine was not an abomination. It was a mirror. It showed the Imperium what it used to be. It showed a time when the law was about justice, not just punishment. The final piece of evidence is a data chip found in the wreckage of a Necron tomb ship. It was found drifting in the halo stars. The Necron ship had been destroyed from the inside. The logic cores were fried. The data chip contained a single image. It was the last thing the Necron overlord saw before he died. The image is grainy. It shows a figure standing in the smoke. The figure is broken. It is leaking oil. It is holding a data spike. And behind the visor, there is a human eye. It is blue. It is sad. And it is very, very alive.